March 24, 2003. 31 U.S. Apache helicopters, each armored for war and undefeated in Desert Storm, launched a deep strike into Iraq. Only one returned ready for combat. 97% were crippled by a sudden low-tech ambush. How did citywide blackouts, cell phones, and a wall of bullets expose vulnerabilities in America's flying tanks and force the Army to abandon its own doctrine? The answer starts here. 31 AH-64 Apache helicopters lifted off from Tactical Assembly Area Vicksburg in the early hours of March 24, 2003. The Army's confidence in these machines was absolute. In the Gulf War 12 years earlier, Apaches had flown more than 1,000 combat sorties without a single combat loss. Their reputation as flying tanks was built on hard numbers. Titanium armor wrapped the cockpit, rated to withstand hits from Soviet 23mm anti-aircraft cannons. Designers called it the bathtub, a shell meant to keep pilots alive even under heavy fire. Every system, from the rotor mast to the avionics, was engineered with battlefield survivability in mind. The Army's doctrine for deep attack rested on this promise, that technology and armor could punch through enemy lines where other platforms could not. Each Apache represented a $20 million investment. That price tag bought radar-guided Hellfire missiles, advanced night vision, and a suite of defensive systems. The logic was simple. Send a force of these armored helicopters deep behind enemy lines, and nothing short of dedicated anti-aircraft artillery could stop them. In Desert Storm, that logic held. The Apaches led the opening assault, destroying more than 500 Iraqi tanks and armored vehicles, shrugging off ground fire and returning unscathed. Not a single aircraft was lost to enemy action. That record, more than any brochure or technical spec, shaped the Army's faith in the Apache. By 2003, the Apache was not just a weapon. It was the centerpiece of Army aviation doctrine, the tool for breaking through enemy armor, striking at command posts, and shaping the battlefield before ground troops arrived. The deep strike mission over Karbala was supposed to be the latest proof of that doctrine. Instead, it would become the ultimate test of everything the Army believed about its most advanced helicopter. Signals intelligence picked up more than 50 cell phone calls as the Apaches crossed into the Karbala corridor. Iraqi spotters, scattered across rooftops and intersections, relayed the helicopter's approach in real time. The city's defenders did not rely on military radios. Civilian networks carried the alerts, making them harder to track and jam. Every call narrowed the window, giving ground teams just enough time to ready their weapons and wait for the signal. That signal came as the city's power grid blinked out. For 3 seconds, Karbala went dark. To Iraqi fire teams, the blackout was no accident. It was the cue to open fire. In that instant, every prepared position along the route erupted. PKM machine guns, NSV heavy machine guns, and Zu-23-2 anti-aircraft cannons lit up the night. Larger S-60 57mm guns added their fire from concealed lots and courtyards. Even civilians with AK-47s joined in, pouring bullets skyward. The defense did not depend on precision or advanced technology. Instead, it relied on mass and timing. Camouflaged teams had spent days preparing firing angles, using the city's dense layout to their advantage. By the time the Apaches entered the engagement zone, every alley and rooftop had become a firing point. The blackout synchronized hundreds of shooters, turning scattered small arms into a single, overwhelming barrage. The helicopters flew into a wall of lead. The volume of fire was staggering, far more than any one gun could produce. Urban terrain hid the shooters and shielded them from return fire. With every block, the Apaches took more hits, forced to fly low and slow by the mission profile, and the maze of buildings below. The defenders' tactics did not need sophisticated targeting. They needed only to fill the air with metal at the right moment. For the first time, the Apache's armor and systems faced not a single threat, but a coordinated city-wide ambush that left no escape. Maintenance teams at Tactical Assembly Area Vicksburg faced a sight few had ever seen. Every Apache that returned carried the scars of the Karbala ambush, some with bullet holes stitched across the fuselage, others leaking hydraulic fluid from fresh punctures. The official count told the story in numbers. 29 helicopters limped back, each with an average of 15 to 20 bullet holes. One airframe landed with 29 distinct entry points, barely holding together as it touched down. The damage went far beyond what could be patched on the flight line. 16 main rotor blades were shredded beyond repair, their composite layers splintered by rifle and machine gun fire. 6 tail rotors were shot away, leaving the helicopters unable to maneuver safely. 6 engines had taken hits that scorched wiring and cracked casings, forcing immediate removal. 5 drive shafts, critical for transmitting power from engine to rotor, were so badly damaged that flight was impossible until replacements arrived. In many helicopters, hydraulic lines had been severed, spraying fluid across the cockpit and rendering flight controls sluggish or unresponsive. Technicians catalogued the carnage, knowing that depot-level repair would ground the squadron for weeks. Not every crew made it back. Vampire 1-2, flown by Chief Warrant Officers David Williams and Ronald Young, was forced down after a hail of gunfire severed its hydraulics and knocked out communications. Williams and Young crash-landed in a marsh outside Karbala, surrounded by hostile territory. They were captured alive by Iraqi forces, paraded on television, and held as prisoners of war until their eventual rescue. Their ordeal became a symbol of the mission's cost, not just in hardware, but in human lives thrown into the chaos of a failed doctrine. For the pilots and maintainers, the aftermath was a bitter reckoning. Machines built to survive the worst the battlefield could offer had been crippled by sheer volume of fire. The numbers on the maintenance logs, rotors, engines, and drive shafts destroyed, were matched by the faces of exhausted crews and the empty seats of those who did not return. The myth of the invincible Apache had been pierced, not by advanced weapons, but by the relentless, coordinated will of defenders on the ground. The after-action reports from Karbala left no room for denial. Army aviation analysts pored over the damage logs and flight data, searching for a technical explanation that would justify the losses. The answer was brutally clear. The Apache's armor, so effective against isolated heavy weapons, had never been designed to withstand hundreds of rifle-caliber rounds fired all at once. The titanium cockpit protected the crew from cannon shells, but the rest of the machine, rotor blades, engines, tail booms, hydraulic lines remained exposed. In urban combat, every gap became a target. Small-caliber bullets, fired en masse, found seams that no engineer could fully shield. One senior maintainer described the effect as death by 1,000 cuts. The technical findings forced Army leadership to confront a hard truth. The deep strike doctrine, built on the promise of armored invulnerability, was now a liability. The Karbala raid proved that no amount of advanced avionics or composite armor could guarantee survival when the enemy replaced precision with volume. As the official Army aviation report later concluded, AH-64s would no longer have a major role in deep attacks. The same document warned that Apaches were highly susceptible to rifle fire when employed en masse, especially in environments where defenders could coordinate fire from every angle. This realization triggered a permanent overhaul in how the Army used its most expensive attack helicopter. Deep penetration raids, once the centerpiece of Apache operations, were abandoned. Instead, Apaches shifted to reconnaissance and close support, operating alongside ground forces or calling in artillery and airstrikes from a safer distance. The lessons of Karbala became required reading at Fort Rucker and other Army aviation schools. Planners would no longer assume that armor and technology could overcome the chaos of urban ambushes. The doctrine that survived Karbala was one of caution, adaptation, and respect for the unpredictable reality of the modern battlefield. Urban battlefields now shape every blueprint and wargame. No armor or technology guarantees invincibility. They create new vulnerabilities. As low-tech tactics keep evolving, military doctrine must evolve with them. The real lesson? Adaptation is survival. What would you change if the next ambush was tomorrow? Share your perspective below.